Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Brightworks. I'm going to adjust my microphone here, hopefully that doesn't sound horrible. There we go. Want to give you guys the best audio experience that you can have imaginable. I've actually just ordered a microphone boom arm to hold the microphone in front of my mouth rather than having it sit on the desk, so that hopefully I'll be able to take a drink of water without offending every single person's ears that's listening with headphones. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Beyond All Reason. Welcome to the cast. Starting this one off with a bit of a interesting take here. But I'm absolutely excited to bring you guys this match on Supreme Straits, the Beyond All Reason map of all time. Supreme Straits version 1.4, gone through a couple of iterations to make sure that it is the absolute peak of quality to get us the games that we all crave here. Supreme Straits, if you're somehow unfamiliar with this map, welcome to Beyond All Reason, because it must be your first day. Supreme Straits is a map that features an interesting lane, usually contested by two players, right here and right here, right in the middle of the map. There are also two massive seas here, which you can see roughly traced out by the white markings on the south and north, commonly referred to as the northern and southern seas. And those are usually contested by one player off of each team as well. And then there are famously two tech positions or eco positions or greed positions or whatever you want to call it in the back lane here that I've circled for you. Now you have a couple of positions that sort of swing from being tech positions to being support positions to whatever else, and those are typically right here. Both of these spots are usually where we see players either deciding to go for a little bit of tech to help the front lines or going for a spam of units to help the front lines. Either way, there's some interesting decisions to be made right there, but anyways, we'll clear off my Picasso-like drawings here and get right into the cast. Representing our blue team, spawning in the northeastern corner, is going to be Smiles. Smiles, a player we've seen throughout the days here as we've been exploring Beyond All Reasons, going back to some of the very earliest casts. A very high skill player, 39 open skill, and the chevrons to match it, demonstrating that they are certainly a high-ranked player, very experienced, and they know what they're doing. So it's going to be very interesting to see them in the backline, because it means that we're probably going to be seeing some very refined builds here as we decide what we're going to go for. Not sure if we're going to go for a tech transition here, if we're going to go for an air lab, not exactly sure. I wasn't reading the chat, although I'm guessing we're going to tech, since Crydunk, the other backliner here, is going for air already. Which makes me assume that we must be headed for that tech route for Smiles. Meanwhile, for the red team, representing the red team in the southwestern corner here, we have JDog75, our red player, already in the water, getting their toes wet as they step out into the sea, getting that lab set up as quickly as possible. They're going to be going up against Ballsy G, who's going for that very, very famous strategy here. You go for one torpedo launcher, and then you go for the shipyard, and that's usually enough protection to keep you safe from those early game units. That paired with the commander, it's usually enough in order to shut down any sort of harassment over here. So I think that's very, very nice to see on behalf of Ballsy G. Very good. Speaking of which, we do have some units moving across. We're going to have some Dolphins as well as a Skater moving over there. And it's going to be very important that Ballsy G gets some units out and about very quickly, otherwise this is going to be a difficult lane to hold. The front lines are going to be held by Unicode Snowman, as well as Hound 9, who is a little bit behind the curve here. Hound 9 is definitely slower to push up here than I would have liked to see. Certainly we should be a little bit further forward with the commander, but I think eventually we will get there. For the blue team here, we're going to have, what is this here? Boo SG Cam? SGC Am? SG Cam. We'll go with SG Cam. SG Cam here, as well as Flux. So interestingly, these teams ended up being balanced because Hound 9 was very slow to push up here, and Flux has not even begun to push up here. In fact, I'm not sure what Flux is up to. Based on the true skills in this lobby, it looks like this is going to be one of those games where some of the newer players get to hang out with the more experienced players, the more the more well-rounded players, and get to learn a little bit about what it means to be a Beyond All Reasons player, and some of the some of the intricacies of different builds here. We can see that a whole lot of Dolphins have indeed been produced by Ballsy G here, which is quite nice. It's going to help him contest. We are also going for a ton of Dolphins, though, out of JDog75's lab. We're certainly looking to shut down this production over here, and maybe even snipe the commander if we can. But at least for the time being, these armies do not want to clash. It would be effectively game over for both of these players. Excuse me. Getting a little excited here. Hound 9 has finally made it up to the front line, and that means that SG Cam is going to be forced off of the front as they no longer are fighting a 1v1. It's going to be 1v2, which is really, really dangerous. Meanwhile, there's tons of metal and rocks right here on this front line, and I would have loved to see these players pushing forward a little bit more aggressively to capture all this before retreating. Hound 9 definitely needs to claim this metal extractor spot. You can see that's 4.3 metal, which is a tremendous amount, especially in the early game here. You can see with an economy of 9 metal per second at the moment, 4.3 is almost half of that. The Dolphins have pushed forward here. Ballsy G's commander in a bit of a predicament, down to 42% here. Looks like the torpedo launcher will survive, and you can see just how poor these engagements can turn. Suddenly, the Dolphins for the red player have been annihilated, meaning that Ballsy G now has tons of metal at their disposal here. 667 metal in wreckages laying at the bottom of the floor that they can turn directly into units. Sorry, 973. Looks like it took a second to update there. 973 metal. Certainly going to be a huge boon to their navy, and J-Dog has to do something quick, otherwise that advantage is going to turn very sour. Meanwhile, a couple of hovercraft have pushed through here by Silver Hornet, making their debut on the Beyond All Reason channel. The Brightworks channel, I mean. Guess it might as well be called the Beyond All Reason channel. They pushed through, and they're actually going to get some nice damage here in the backline. Oh, finish that energy converter. No, shoot the energy converter. It's so explosive. Please, we're begging you. There we go. We set it off, and that destroys a ton of the economy back here. Reduces a couple of those advanced solar panels to rubble in the backline, so they won't even be able to be resurrected. They're just down to smoke. Meanwhile, we do have these hovercraft continuing to push forward here into Smiles' base. Smiles in a little bit of trouble. There's actually no units out at the moment. Okay, yep, that shuts down the that advanced metal collector here. Oh, whoops. Yeah, looks like we're going to continue harassing back here. Ooh, we are going to snipe the wind power. That's quite nice. If we could just target any of these wind turbines here. Yep, that'll do it. Causing a nice little chain reaction. Take down the grave robber. That's quite nice. Wow, really, really good harassment back here in the backline by Silver Hornet. Very nicely done. Very low commitment to those hovercraft, but definitely a tremendous advantage for the team now, as Smiles is going to have to spend quite a bit of time rebuilding here. Curious what they're going to go for, actually, because suddenly our energy production is absolutely abysmal. We need to see a ton of these windmills rebuilt here. Maybe a couple of advanced solars might be the next best move, as the wind production is slowly dying here. Navies down south are beginning to rise and fall here. Oh, Unicode's Snowman sacrifices the commander to take out that army of maces and rocketeers, it looks like. Commander will go down, but I think it was a worthwhile sacrifice, especially considering we had the good sense to pack a resbot here in order to eat up some of that commander's metal. We didn't get it all, but that's fine. We can't even spend it all at this point. We need to... Do we need more build power back here? Is that where we're actually stalling? No, it's energy. Well, can't really be to blame. We do have the wind power, but it's just the wind speed has dropped really, really poorly at the moment, meaning that, unfortunately, very few units are coming out right now. I think maces are definitely a good option here. Certainly going to be very effective against these pawns, but also against any of those incisors. And yeah, I think that's definitely the right call. Friendly pawns are also a decent option. Never go wrong with a bunch of pawns. One of the most versatile units in the game. They're effective basically all the time. Wow, that construction turret will stay alive for just a single % of health. 5 HP remaining. That was very close. But it does work, because now Hound 9 is going to be able to cover this. We need to shut down this resbot. Oh, these resbots did eat up that entire commander. They're actually going to claim a whole lot of this this wreckage field here. Stumbling all over my words today. Not sure what's gotten into me. Quiet Listener here is going to be building that bot lab. Building bots out of that bot lab. Trying to recuperate from the damage here. Luckily, the geothermal plant didn't go down. That was their main energy production source here, as well as some of these windmills. But certainly the geothermal is very, very efficient. But it's going to be important that we do get these energy converters back up and running. We are leaking a tremendous amount of resources at the moment because we're reclaiming off the front lines, and we have nowhere near the build power in order to facilitate pumping out units at a decent enough rate to keep up with our metal income. We could be ecoing up. We could be doing all sorts of stuff. Looks like, oh, interesting. Looks like Smiles has tapped out of the game. Quite unfortunate. Odd. I'm not sure why Smiles tapped out of the game, but it looks like it's going to be Crydunk in the back line here, working their very best magic possible in order to try and salvage this situation. Meanwhile, a whole bunch of these hovercraft have poised themselves over here in the southern sea here, as Silver Hornet is getting ready for some shenanigans. Looks like we're moving the commander back here. We've got a jammer as well as a radar over here. That's kind of nice. We don't have anything coming out of the hovercraft lab, and we are getting pretty full on metal, so I'd love to see either a tech transition or maybe we go for a little bit more economy. One way or another, we need to just make sure that we're spending our metal however we possibly can. Those hovercraft will push onto the mainland, and there's not a great response for us at the moment. The Dolphins completely missed them. The destroyers are out in front, which is not ideal. You definitely want the Dolphins soaking the shots while the destroyers are firing from a distance. Destroyers are trying to fire their depth charges at those submarines, getting some good hits in here. And eventually those submarines will go down. Very, very nice. Meanwhile, the Dolphins are winning the engagement here for Ballsy G, and you can see just how devastating that snowballing can be when you lose that first engagement here like J-Dog did with the Dolphins, and suddenly that metal advantage turned into 3 destroyers, and that was all it took in order to win this engagement just that much more effectively. Really, really dangerous stuff. That's just how quickly Navy can turn. We definitely need some resurrection subs in this mix if we ever want to recuperate here for J-Dog. Ballsy G does have the res sub out, and I would love to see it go eat this all up. In fact, it's already got it planned. It's just going to try and fix up the commander first and foremost. Meanwhile, the hover tanks have been ravaging the backline here. Oh, very nice. All the windmills do go down. That's a very, very nice play. They gave me fire. Playing with a VR headset apparently did not give him a better map awareness, unfortunately, as his entire base was ravaged. Bombing run here to take out some of the production facilities for our light blue player, and the red team is absolutely devastating the blues. There are plenty of fighters out here, so it's a little surprising how effective this bombing run has been. These windmills were spaced out enough, though, that there wasn't a chain reaction, so that is quite fortunate here for Flux. Otherwise, things could have looked tremendously worse. Another bomber coming in here. Oh, and we do get the vehicle lab. That's actually quite nice. Oh, wow. It can help with the chain reaction, but it doesn't entirely prevent it. Or prevents it, but it does. They're still close enough to damage each other, if that makes any sense. SG Cam is moving the commander forward on the front lines here. Going to be degaining down at least one of those tanks. Just trying to hold the line here, and I think that's probably not a bad idea. One of the Centurion will fall, but there will be another to replace it. And this front line looks fairly stable at the moment. Meanwhile, Winchester Rick is building up a navy. We've got a couple of units back here. We are starting up a T2 vehicle lab. We're actually finishing up a T2 vehicle lab. Very interesting. And we're going to be getting that T2 vehicle constructor out. All right, quite nice. So now Ballsy G is in a weird predicament because they had this tremendous advantage on the land. Huge, huge advantage. But now it has been completely ravaged by all of those hovercraft. Meaning that they're going to have to sustain themselves entirely off of the metal that they can pull out of the ground right here. Which is on a single res sub doing that. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a while. You can see that their metal income shoots up like crazy whenever this thing is reclaiming, but it goes down again as soon as it's done. Torpedo bombers, the T2 sea bomber, I guess you could call it, is out and about here, and it's going to start laying down a little bit of fire here. Those Dolphins eager to tilt their cannons up and into the sky, try and do a ton of damage here. What are these bombers aiming at? They're kind of fumbling all their shots here. I'm not sure what they're actually trying to target. Whatever it is, though, they're doing a pretty horrendous job, as these torpedoes are not really taking effect here. A lot of fighters are going to shut these down, and eventually, yeah, I'm pretty underwhelmed with how those bombers did. I think they definitely could have done a whole lot better. We do have some bombers moving in to try and attack this area. There is an anti-air turret, but we're going to try and bomb that first. That's definitely the right idea. Take out the anti-air first, and then you're free to lay down your bombs however you feel, however you please. Fighters are eventually going to come over here to try and clean this up. I think I definitely would have targeted the metal extractors. That would have been a little bit harder to replace, or a little bit A little bit more worthwhile than killing a single laser turret and a thistle, but that's okay. What is Silver Hornet up to? Looks like Silver Hornet is going for a T2... oh, interesting. We're going for a T2 vehicle lab as well as a T2 naval lab. That is interesting. The T2 vehicle lab costs 2,800 metal. The naval lab costs 3,100 metal for a grand combined total of 5,000 metal, all said and done. That's a tremendous amount of resources to put into buildings, and we don't really even have the economy to sustain unit production for all that, so I don't know if that's quite the right idea here. Meanwhile, dolphins, and yeah, more dolphins is basically the name of the game here. I really like when naval engagements turn into more sophisticated battles. We see combined forces here. I think the destroyers working in tandem with the dolphins is absolutely beautiful. It's going to help those submarines out as well. Yeah, I don't think straight dolphin is the king in naval warfare here, and I think the outcome of this battle just stands in testament to that. Now, that is to say that these torpedo bombers have been helping quite severely here, doing quite a lot of damage to whatever dolphins and whatever else they can find. So that's certainly worth it. Well, those torpedoes made a full 180 to go kill that submarine. They were attacking with a vengeance. How is he recovered? Well, it's because of all this metal that's being left on the bottom of the ocean floor here. You can see this is tons and tons of metal. In fact, I can show you how much metal it is. Is it really 3.6? Wow. 3.5 thousand metal lying on the bottom of the ocean floor there, and that's just ripe for the pickings. Anybody can grab that, except it's so close to Policy G, it's almost certainly going to go back to his economy, meaning that tons and tons of ships are going to come out, and I would love to see a little bit of expansion on the back here. Maybe get this guy building a couple of construction turrets, start working on an eco center, get some T2 units out, maybe get a T2 economy up and running. Certainly we have the metal for it now lying on the bottom of the floor of the ocean here, and I would love to see it. J-Dog, meanwhile, has been expanding their economy, which is the only reason that they're able to keep up with this. Also the fact that we have these metal extractors out here in the ocean, which are comparable to the metal extractors that we have on land here. We can see there's 6 metal extractors for Ball ZG, whereas there is 3 here, 1 here, that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 metal extractors for J-Dog 75. I think if J-Dog 75 built a more efficient unit composition here, if we built a if we built a couple destroyers and fewer submarines, I think they would definitely have the advantage, but certainly, at least for right now, that is not the case. I'm curious what the plan is here for Silver Hornet. They have been making good plays here with those hovercraft. They've been able to get tremendous effect out of those. Looks like there was a big engagement that I missed up here. Yeah, there's some debris laying around all over the field. Winchester Rick must have gone for some sort of push that devastated the production facilities for Ninja Guy as they have stepped into T2 production. So this is a really, really inefficient way to handle a team game. What I notice is that a lot of these players have T2 labs of their own. We have a T2 lab here, and then we have all T1 here. We're planning a T2 lab. We have T2 lab here. We have the multiple T2 labs here for Silver Hornet. What you want to do is you essentially always want to make sure that only as few people as necessary are building those T2 labs, at least the first T2 lab or two. And so what I mean by that is, for instance, Crydunk rather, should have given out T2 constructors, especially since we have the air lab. We should have been giving out T2 aerial constructors to basically anybody who needs them. That's sort of the price you pay for playing the backline, is you have to give away some units for free. You can think of it like this if it helps. The front line is basically giving up metal. They're spending their metal on defending. You have to spend your metal on the team, right? So your metal should definitely go towards, wow, those shot down one of these bombers here. It's pretty impressive for those, well, I guess it's mostly these skaters here, but Dolphins are helping too. Anyway, you should not be afraid to give out units if you're in the backline position. A lot of people, it's a heated debate on whether you should give out units or whether you should make people pay for them. My 2 cents on that problem are, if you are in the spot where you've microed so flawlessly that you literally have 0 metal at the time that your T2 lab comes up, which is an absolute possibility. That's especially like the very first T2 lab that comes up in the game. That's certainly likely. you probably should ask for payment at that point. You should probably take some metal, and it's not because it's not like a fairness thing. It's because you can just get units out to people way quicker, and that 500 metal or whatever it costs to build a T2, yeah, usually people just pay 500 or 450 or something like that. That metal is negligible compared to the benefit that they're going to get from that T2 constructor. So it's like, even if they don't pay it, it's still beneficial to get that constructor out, because eventually they'll either be able to. They're basically you're buying them time, right? You're paying the cost so that they can hold the line a little bit longer for you. Well, a couple of these hounds have pushed forward here, and they get absolutely torn apart by these bulls. Those bulls do not care about hounds whatsoever. We have a raggedy group of bombers pushing in one by one. Not really the idea here, especially considering we already have those T2 flak out. Now, those bombers are dropping their payload before they're shot down by the flak, so I suppose it's still sort of working, but still, this is a very expensive way to kill a radar tower. Yeah, not a big fan of that bombing run. I think some scouts are definitely in order. Oh, we do have some scouting points coming out here, actually. Wait, what? Where did these scout points come from? So... Okay, let me get this straight here. So Silver Hornet now has a seaplane platform, a hovercraft platform, a T2 vehicle bay, and a T2 shipyard. The man that does it all. We're like, you know, Silver Hornet is definitely the kind of person that opens the catalog, like the shopping catalog, the Christmas catalog, and it just goes crazy with the Sharpie, you know, just circling every single thing in the book. Ooh, I want one of those, and definitely two of those. We're gonna need some of them, and we're certainly gonna need at least one of everything else. Phenomenal. Normally, you would never ever be able to get away with that. Your production would just be too horrendously slow here. But the fact of the matter is, we're only producing out of one of these at a time. So we have all these labs, but it's not like we're overstressing our economy. We're just building up these huge fronts of metal, and then spending it on one thing at a time. We do have the missile ship out, and I think we should definitely move this across as soon as possible. I would love to see one of these long-range battle submarines pumped out too, the Kraken. Send that across just to start destroying all of this raggedy defense left over from the green players' time in the water. I think it's just one way to help the sea player establish their dominance. It looks like Winchester Rick has gone for that T2 shipyard as well. We are going to go for some of those fast assault submarines, those Predators. It's very nice. I don't think Winchester Rick quite realizes the fact that they are essentially completely uncontested on the sea. So I would love to see some of these skaters, herrings rather, moving out and scouting around, just so that they can realize that they can be a lot more loose with their movements out in the middle of the map. Wow, this beamer, absolutely devastating these rascals. They don't stand a chance. This thing is a Silver Star General at this point, as it carves through these little RC cars moving across the map here. We do have some gunships that were brought forward, but there is anti-air flak. That's going to be quite nice for dismantling all that. Marauder production has begun. Hurricane has been busy in the backline here. We've got 4 advanced fusion reactors, 4 regular fusion reactors, tons and tons of energy converters, and a T3 lab to boot. Starting up more advanced fusion reactors as well to pay for the energy that these units cost, and I think this is absolutely a great move. This eco cheese can be difficult to pull off. You can really catch yourself in a bad position here where your front line fails, and that T3 Marauder push essentially has to be wasted on saving the front line as opposed to sparing the back line. Oh, but we did send a Razorback up front. Very nicely done. Actually, I really like that move coming out by Hurricane. Sending just a single Razorback up front can be just a world of difference here. The potential that a single Razorback can contribute to a front line is absolutely devastating. Let alone the fact that the intimidation factor of seeing a Razorback on the front line, because as soon as you see a Razorback, you're like, oh crap, I've got to back off now. Yep, you can see the commander moving forward here, trying to get into position. We realize, like, okay, now we got to basically risk a commander in order to solve this problem. But yeah, if this Razorback is controlled properly, it certainly shouldn't ever come within danger's reach, and it's going to be easily tearing through this army here. You can see it's at 50% health-ish, more or less, 47% health, and it's just having a field day tearing apart all of these rascals that are being sent to the front line. The strategy from Crydunk has been to spam units. That's their plan here. We're just going to be spamming out rascals. We can see that that costs a tremendous amount of metal. If we just highlight all of those plus all of these, we can see that that is a whopping 500 to 700 metal per second being pumped into those facilities, and we certainly do not have the economy for all that. There's also a growing economy in the back, though, so that's part of the reason why we're so strapped for metal at the moment. The beamer turret go down. That beamer was incredibly effective against these. I would love to see a couple more of those thrown up here, especially considering we have the T2 vehicle lab. The console can throw up those beamer turrets rather quickly, so certainly would be worth investing in some of those. We do have some of these gunships trying to tear this down, but we have tons and tons of anti-air folded into this army, into this navy rather, so that's not going to work. Torpedo gunships being used here to harass down some of these destroyers, and that's quite nice. Quite nice indeed. That's a very, very effective way of dealing some damage there. Wow, look at all those. All of these tilting their guns upward and firing at those torpedo gunships looks absolutely hilarious. Let's see if we can see it again. What an epic clash right there. Dolphin versus Dolphin. That is a battle of the high seas if I ever saw one. I think these ships might be a little bit better controlled. It might be more effective to get us around from these ships here. But I mean, there's so much metal and dolphins right here on the front line. It's hard to even say how to properly control this army, other than just make sure that you're doing as much damage to the enemy as you possibly can at any one time. See, the problem with this engagement is like half of these dolphins aren't actually firing. The furthest ones aren't really firing. So if you can keep them spread out and keep putting out way more DPS than your enemy's dolphins are, eventually you're going to win the engagement. We can see the red player came out with just a few more dolphins than the enemy. But it's time for the Marauder push. This was really what this was all about, basically just thinning out that army, or that navy rather, so that there was nothing else there. Let's take a look real quick. 14,000 metal. But the Marauders are moving in, and the Marauders, as well as pushing in here and being absolutely devastating, they are going to start disassembling this air wall, which is another key feature here. Something that people often discount the Marauder for is their anti-air attack, but it certainly can put in work. And we can see that here as it starts to tear apart all of these light aircraft that were making up the air wall here. They're not going to do as much damage against T2, but certainly they will eventually in numbers. So it takes quite a few shots of theirs to take down those T2 aircraft, but it's not like those aircraft can fight back, so pretty much infinite value here. We are going to split the Marauders. Very nicely done. Yep, if you're going up against Shiva, the best thing you can do, the most efficient thing you can do is split up your units and make sure that you're constantly keeping them split so that those Shiva AoE plasma balls cannot get as devastating an effect done here. The Marauder are continuing to push through. They were not all shut down by the Commander, which does eventually end up exploding, and the production facilities here for the purple player do get shut down. At the very least, a whole lot of the construction turrets die. There is a Sabo battery here to do some damage to these Marauders, and it looks like the last Marauder will fall, but not before this base was completely turned off. All of those T1 vehicle plants are non-producing anymore. These Marauders have been failed to be microed here. A little bit of an APM stall. Unfortunate. Silver Hornet got his commander stuck, it would appear. Going for a Black Hydra here on 70 metal a second. Wow, that Black Hydra must have been brewing from the very start of this game. Our economy has basically just stayed exactly where it is. We haven't gone for advanced fusion reactors. We haven't gone for energy converters. We went for a bunch of these tidal generators and a couple of T1 energy converters, but certainly we could have seen more. But the Black Hydra is out now, and that's basically all it's going to take. That Black Hydra can rain down siege from so far away. Meanwhile, it looks like Winchester Rick has eventually pushed forward with his navy. Not as confident in those T1 ships, but it looks like eventually we got those T2 ships out, and that was enough to convince him that he had what it took to push forward here to eventually secure the day. Meanwhile, some of these dam busters, the seaplane bombers, are out, and I love these things. They drop 2 clusters of bombs. If you look at the spread of their target acquisition there, it's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, they drop like 2 clusters of 1,000 bombs, and it just looks absolutely ridiculous. I'm so surprised that we're just continuously going for these dolphins here. Imagine if these armies had been half the size, but had been made of dreadnoughts, or destroyers rather. It would have been so much better. Really just tremendously more efficient here. Oh well. Can't have a perfect navy every time, and it's hard to say that these dolphins have been ineffective. They haven't been a perfect trade every time, but they've certainly gotten their values worth here and there. Marauders a little more scuffed up coming out of the water this time than they were last time. There is a stealth tank here. Ooh, we cannot detonate stealth tanks in order to EMP. I think that's what we're going for here. Yep. Unfortunately, stealth tanks do not work nearly the same way as spy bots. They are just invisible. They do not EMP. That is quite funny. A lesson was learned today. A valuable lesson. The Marauders stalled there for a minute, but they eventually will continue marching. The Starlight actually going to be doing some good work here, as it will get a couple shots off. Scuffing up the paint on those Marauders, chipping away at it, but eventually they will run out of the range of those Marauders. Do we have our commander still back here? I thought we did. Maybe not. Oh no, the commander was out of position here. They gave me fire. Unfortunately, the commander was out of position, and that does mean that the Marauders are now in the back line. We don't have the energy to even fund the Starlight. Oh no. Marauders are in the back line. They get the energy converters. That's the build power down. The advanced fusion reactor was so close to finishing, but it just won't be enough as the Marauders take out all of the production here. Yeah, not enough anti-air to deal with those hornets up in the sky, those wasps rather, and there are more Scorpion batteries in the back line here to protect against any of those stragglers. So for the meantime, the push is held. Now we have the Black Hydra pushing forward, and it will be laying down that long-range siege. It's going to start chipping away at the economy centers here of Ninja Guy 10, who is not producing anything. Ninja Guy 10 just doing a humble AFK. Yep, looks like they have not resigned from the match, but they have decided to just walk away from the keyboard. Went to go get a drink. Went to go have a sip. Quiet listener now forced to do cleanup as all of their front line is now AFK. Well, major part of the front line is AFK anyways. Tremors should always be controlled in such a way that they're just told to attack a certain area. You can put them on their long-range mode now, which allows them to shoot a bit further. And you should basically always just have them firing into an area. You don't really want them targeting specific units because it takes forever for them to align their little snuzzle head. And it wastes a tremendous amount of time. Basically, the power of the tremor is that it can put out a huge amount of fire, but it wastes a ton of time not putting out fire when it's swiveling its head around. So you see the problem there. Starlight do not care about these bubble shields, and they will shoot right through them with their tachyon lances, easily cleaving through them. The Bulls will have much more trouble, though, as they try to fire and find themselves shooting backwards into their face, like pissing into the wind, as those plasma projectiles turn around and hit them right in the face. This naval battle has been something else. Dolphin versus Dolphin. We're finally seeing a mass submarine presence here. I'm surprised it has taken this long. I'm also surprised we don't have... What are we bombing? That metal extractor has never been deader. T2 bombers to absolutely ravage that metal extractor. Meanwhile, we're up to T2 units here for Blazy G, so if we get a snowballed amount of those T2 units, certainly this army is going to be really easy to mop up. The red army is going to be easy to mop up, rather. But what that also means is we need to get those units out and about. We don't have the energy production. We didn't really scale in the back here. It would definitely be worthwhile to hand some energy production over to Blazy G. That would certainly turn their facility on overdrive, and they'd be able to pump out a whole lot more units than they currently can. Right now, their production is essentially based on the overflow. Now a bunch of bombers are moving in. Very, very light anti-air here on some of these Seekers. Definitely not enough for any of this T2, and that lab will go down. Very, very expensive loss right there. And these bombers have shredded it to pieces. Where are these bombers headed next? Hard to say. They're not too well guided, not too preordained. They're just worried about cruising around and having a good time more than anything else. Meanwhile, this capital ship is continuing to be a pain. We can see just how far this thing can reach. It can actually shoot all the way into the economy center back here, but I doubt that we have vision of that. Yeah, we do not. If we had vision of that, I'm sure that's exactly where we'd be shooting into, but for now, this capital ship is just going to be firing at whatever we can. Ninja Guy has returned here and is now producing more units. We do have the Tremor out in the out on the field, trying to lay down some fire, but it is, again, not told to attack an area. If we just hit A on the grid keyboard, we can just pull up the manual fire mode. If we just told this thing to attack out into the sea over on this area, it'd be way more effective here. Always something to keep in mind. Wow, that is a lot of Thors. How many Thors do we have here? 11 Thors rolling forward here. You might kill the first one. You might kill the first 5. But there's still plenty more after that. And these will easily melt through all this T1 garbage, essentially, at this point here. As they absolutely ravage this front line. Didn't even use their EMP missiles, by the way, which could have just paralyzed everything here, made this an even easier push. We are going to bring the EMP bombers forward. Sure, why not? Use whatever we got, but it won't really matter. These Thors are going to be more than happy to just keep rolling forward. This is absolutely critical. This is a ridiculous amount of Thors. This many Thors should win essentially any game here. 90,000 metal worth of Thors stomping on ahead. Not only are those Thors really damaging, but their lightning bolts arc across as well. So it's not just the fact that each one of these can output a tremendous amount of damage, it's the fact that together all of them can output damage to a tremendous amount of things all at once. You can see their lightning bolts blasting down this Juggernaut like it's nothing. Wow, I don't know if I've ever seen a Juggernaut go down so quickly before. That was insane, the speed with which that thing went down. EMP bombers are, of course, safe to use around these Thors. The Thors are completely immune to EMP, so it's certainly one option. We've got lightning tanks rolling through as well, going to be having much better effect than those bulls did, trying to get through those energy shields here. Starlight's in the back for that Tachyon Lance in order to pierce those shields, and for what it's worth, they do a phenomenal job. Wow, that Prude is tough. I've been looking at that out of the corner of my eye. It took forever for that thing to go down. But the Thors cannot be stopped. We do eventually have a massive army being produced here. It looks like we started up more energy production, so we can at the very least keep producing units here. Now that those T2 units are out, the red player has been completely outscaled, but it doesn't matter. They've lasted long enough, this game has gone far enough, and it looks like Hurricane has echoed phenomenally in the back lane here. We are at 19 advanced fusion reactors, and we are using it dutifully here. We can see we are not stalling on metal or energy. We're using it all in the back lane. We have 2 at T3 facilities producing constantly. This is absolutely beautiful. And for using up all that metal, we have won the game with it. Really, really nicely done. There goes the main economy centers for our purple player, who is at this point tapped out of the game. Krydunk, that's the name. Never forget the day you almost caught Krydunk. Not sure why that reminded me of Pirates of the Caribbean. There you go. Ninja Guy. Looks like one of the last commanders here. That's down to 2. Where are the other commanders here? It looks like we're gonna have, They Gave Me Fire has one commander over here. And Ballsy G is also over here as well. That is going to be the end of this game, though. There's no coming back at this point, so we are going to speed this one up. Crank up the speed here as we watch the final moments of a desperate struggle in low FPS resolution. Dolphin battle happening down south here. Oh, looks like SG Cam, the only one not willing to surrender. Okay, I see what's happening. SG Cam actually the only one willing to surrender here. As they take the commanders and detonate them rather than just hitting the resign button. And that is going to be all she wrote for the blue team. Congratulations to the red team. Very, very nicely done. Great eco scaling here in the back line. Excellent job holding the front line and applying a tremendous amount of pressure. Certainly this game could have been a whole lot quicker if we had seen T2 units handed out and distributed more efficiently. But it was an absolute gobsmacker banger of a match, and I hope you all enjoyed seeing it. Let me know down below what you thought. Anyways, I will see you in the next video.